You've been lying to yourself. Every time you talk about what you're going to do, you feel a small rush of satisfaction. You tell your friends about the business you're planning to start. You explain your workout routine to anyone who will listen. You announce your intentions on social media, gathering likes and encouragement. And then something strange happens. The motivation fades. The action never comes. You've already received the reward of recognition without doing any of the work. This is the trap that keeps millions of people stuck. They mistake talking for doing. They confuse planning with progress. They spend so much energy describing the life they want that they have nothing left to actually build it. And every word spoken about future action makes that action less likely to happen. This phenomenon has a name in psychology: substitution. Your brain accepts a substitute reward, the pleasure of sharing your plans, in place of the real reward, the satisfaction of actual achievement. It's like eating the menu instead of the meal. You feel temporarily satisfied, but you've consumed nothing of substance. Think about the last time you announced a major goal. Remember the rush of excitement, the congratulations from others, the sense of possibility? Now think about what happened next. For most people, that rush was the peak. Everything after was decline. The initial excitement faded, and the hard work required to actually achieve the goal seemed less appealing. Why? Because you'd already gotten your reward. Your brain had already closed the loop. The announcement was the climax, and everything after felt like anticlimax. Look around you. The most successful people you know, the ones who actually accomplish things, how much do they talk about what they're going to do? Usually, not much. They're too busy doing it. Meanwhile, the chronic talkers, the ones who always have big plans and exciting ideas, where are their results? Their conversation is their product. Their announcement is their achievement. This pattern is so common it should be obvious, but we don't see it in ourselves. We think our situation is different. We think we need to talk through our plans, need external validation, need support and encouragement before we can act. But this need is the very thing keeping us from action. The Stoics understood this 2,000 years ago. They were obsessed with action, with doing, with the gap between what we say and what we actually accomplish. Marcus Aurelius, who ruled the most powerful empire on earth, wrote in his private journal, "Waste no more time arguing about what a good man should be. Be one. Not describe one, not plan to become one. Be one. Now, through action." Today, I'm going to show you how to break free from the prison of endless talk and step into the freedom of relentless action. This isn't motivation. Motivation is just another form of talking to yourself. This is about building systems, habits, and mental frameworks that force you to act even when you don't feel like it, especially when you don't feel like it. Before we begin, write in the comments, "I stop talking, I start doing today." This is your first action. Small, yes, but action nonetheless, and action builds on action. Let's begin. The first truth you must accept is that talking destroys doing. This isn't just philosophy, it's psychology. When you announce your intentions to others, your brain experiences what researchers call social reality. You receive recognition and validation for the goal itself, which satisfies the same psychological need that achieving the goal would satisfy. Your brain, in its efficiency, thinks, why do the hard work when we've already gotten the reward? This is why the person who constantly talks about their diet rarely loses weight, why the aspiring writer who tells everyone about their novel never finishes a chapter, why the entrepreneur who pitches their idea at every party never actually launches. The talking isn't preparation for action, it's a substitute for action. It's the easier path that tricks your brain into feeling productive while producing nothing. The Stoics practiced a radical discipline. They let their actions speak. Epictetus taught, "Don't explain your philosophy, embody it." Not because explanation is bad, but because explanation so easily becomes a replacement for embodiment. When you're busy living your principles, you don't have time to lecture others about them. When you're deep in the work, you don't have energy to describe the work. Here's your first practice. For the next 30 days, stop announcing your intentions. When you decide to start a new project, tell no one. When you commit to a new habit, keep it to yourself. When you set a goal, write it in a private journal that no one else sees. Remove the social reward for intention so that the only reward available comes from achievement. This will feel strange at first. We are conditioned to share, to seek support, to announce. But notice what happens when you can't talk about what you're going to do. The only option left is to do it. The energy that would have gone into explanation goes into execution. The validation you would have received from others must now come from yourself, from actually completing what you set out to complete. There's a deeper reason why silence about intentions is powerful. When you announce a goal, you create external accountability. This sounds good, but it often backfires. Now you're working to prove something to others rather than to serve your own growth. The motivation becomes external, which is weaker and less sustainable than internal motivation. When you keep your goals private, all accountability is to yourself. All motivation is internal. There's no one to impress, no one to disappoint except yourself. This self-contained relationship with your goals is ultimately more powerful because it can't be taken away. Others' opinions can change. Your relationship with yourself remains. The Stoics valued internal validation over external recognition. They did what was right because it was right, not because others would praise them. This same principle applies to goal pursuit. Achieve because achievement matters to you, not because others will congratulate you. The work is its own reward. The transformation is its own prize. There's one more aspect of this worth understanding. When you announce your intentions, you invite judgment. Now you have to worry about what people will think if you fail, if you change course, if you take longer than expected. This fear of judgment can paralyze you. You might avoid taking necessary risks because failure would be public. You might stick with a bad plan because you already told everyone about it. When your goals are private, you have freedom. Freedom to fail without shame, freedom to change direction without explanation, freedom to experiment without performance anxiety. This freedom allows for the kind of exploration and iteration that successful action requires. You can try things, fail at them, and try something else, all without an audience waiting to see the show. If this resonates with you, hit the like button. It tells me you're ready to trade words for results. There's something else that happens when you stop announcing intentions. You stop seeking permission. Every time you tell someone about your plans, there's a subtle request for approval embedded in the telling. You're looking for validation, for someone to tell you it's a good idea, for the green light to proceed. But this seeking of permission is itself a form of procrastination. You're waiting for external authorization to live your own life. When you keep your plans private, you take full ownership. There's no one to blame if it doesn't work out, but there's also no one whose approval you need to begin. You become the sole author of your actions. This is terrifying and liberating in equal measure. Terrifying because there's nowhere to hide. Liberating because there's nothing holding you back. The Stoics were clear on this point. External validation is not within your control. Whether others approve of your plans is up to them, not you. By keeping your intentions private, you stop wasting energy on the uncontrollable and redirect it toward what you can control, your own actions. The second truth is that action creates motivation, not the other way around. Most people wait to feel motivated before they act. They're waiting for inspiration, for the right mood, for circumstances to align. They think motivation is the fuel that powers action, but they have it exactly backwards. Motivation is the result of action, not the cause. When you force yourself to begin something, even in the smallest way, momentum builds. The act of doing creates the feeling of wanting to do more. But if you wait for the feeling first, you might wait forever. The Stoics didn't believe in waiting for the right mood. They believed in doing what needed to be done, regardless of mood. Marcus Aurelius would write about dragging himself out of bed in the cold darkness, not because he felt energized, but because work needed to be done. The feeling of energy came after he started, not before. Here's the mechanism. Action triggers neurological changes. When you begin a task, your brain releases chemicals that increase focus and engagement. Your self-image starts to shift from someone who thinks about doing to someone who actually does. Each completed action, however small, builds evidence that you are the kind of person who follows through. This evidence accumulates into identity, and identity is the most powerful driver of behavior. This means you must stop waiting and start forcing. Force yourself to begin. Force yourself to take the first step. Force yourself to work for just 5 minutes. The motivation will come after, generated by the action itself. But if you wait for motivation first, you're waiting for something that action itself must create. Here's a practical technique, the 5-minute commitment. When you don't feel like doing something, commit to doing it for only 5 minutes. Just 5 minutes, then you can stop. What happens almost every time is that once you start, you continue. The hardest part is beginning. Once you're in motion, staying in motion becomes easier. But even if you do stop after 5 minutes, you've still done 5 minutes more than you would have done waiting for motivation. There's another dimension to this worth exploring. When you force yourself to act without motivation, you're training a crucial capacity, the ability to operate independently of your emotional state. Most people are slaves to their moods. They can only work when they feel like it, exercise when they're energized, create when they're inspired. This makes them unreliable, not just to others, but to themselves. But when you practice acting regardless of mood, you develop freedom from emotional tyranny. Your feelings become information rather than commands. You can notice that you don't feel like doing something while still doing it. This capacity separates those who achieve from those who only dream. Seneca wrote, "It is not that we have a short time to live, but that we waste a lot of it." The time you spend waiting for motivation is time wasted. The time you spend talking about what you'll do is time you could be doing. Every minute in preparation mode, when you're ready to actually execute, is a minute stolen from your life. The third truth is that your environment determines your actions more than your willpower does. Most people try to force action through pure willpower. They grit their teeth and push through resistance. Sometimes this works for a while, but willpower is a limited resource. It depletes with use. Relying on willpower alone is like trying to drive across the country on a single tank of gas. The Stoics understood this. They designed their lives to make good actions easier and bad actions harder. They removed temptations. They structured their days. They created environments that supported the behavior they wanted, rather than fighting against constant resistance. If you want to write, create a space with no distractions where writing is the only option. If you want to exercise, lay out your workout clothes the night before and put your phone in another room. If you want to eat better, don't keep junk food in your house. Don't rely on your willpower to resist the cookie. Make sure the cookie isn't there. This is strategic laziness. You're making the desired action the path of least resistance. Your brain, given options, tends to choose what's easiest. So make what's right easiest. Make distraction difficult. Make procrastination inconvenient. Make the good choice the default choice. Here's an example. If you want to read more books instead of scrolling your phone, put the book on your pillow each morning. When you go to bed, the book is there, waiting. Put your phone in a drawer in another room, charging overnight. Now, reading is easier than scrolling. You've engineered your environment to support your intention. The concept of choice architecture is relevant here. Every environment is structured in ways that make certain choices more likely than others. Supermarkets put candy at the checkout to trigger impulse purchases. Social media apps use infinite scroll to keep you engaged. These environments are designed against your interests, but you can design your personal environment for your interests. Think about each space where you spend time. Your bedroom, your workspace, your kitchen. How are these spaces currently structured? Do they support the actions you want to take, or do they work against you? Small changes in environment can produce large changes in behavior. Moving the TV out of the bedroom. Keeping your phone in a different room during work hours. Having healthy food visible and junk food hidden. These aren't dramatic changes, but they remove friction from good choices and add friction to bad ones. The Stoics also applied this principle to their social environment. They chose their companions carefully, knowing that we become like the people we spend time with. If you spend time with people who are all talk and no action, you'll tend toward talk. If you spend time with people who do rather than discuss, you'll tend toward action. Your social environment shapes you just as much as your physical environment. Subscribe to this channel if you're finding value here. Every video is designed to help you close the gap between who you are and who you're capable of becoming. The fourth truth is that identity drives action more than goals do. Most people set goals, lose 20 pounds, make 6 figures, write a book. But goals, by themselves, rarely produce lasting change. You might achieve the goal through temporary effort, then slide back to your previous behavior. Or you might never achieve it at all, because the daily actions required feel disconnected from who you believe yourself to be. The Stoics focused not on specific outcomes, but on becoming a certain kind of person. They asked not, "What do I want to achieve?" but "Who do I want to be?" This shift is crucial. When your focus is on identity rather than goals, every action becomes an expression of who you are, not just a step towards some external outcome. Here's how this works practically. Instead of "I want to lose weight," think "I am someone who takes care of their body." Instead of "I want to write a book," think "I am a writer." Instead of "I want to start a business," think "I am an entrepreneur." The goal is the same, but the frame is different, and the frame changes everything. When you identify as someone who takes care of their body, every choice becomes a vote for or against that identity. Eating well isn't a sacrifice you make to reach a goal. It's an expression of who you are. Exercising isn't punishment. It's what people like you do. The motivation becomes internal, continuous, and self-reinforcing. Marcus Aurelius constantly reminded himself of who he was supposed to be. Not the emperor, not the title, but the character. A person of wisdom, justice, courage, and temperance. Every action was measured against this identity. Does this action express who I am? Does it reinforce or contradict my character? He would write in his journal about the kind of person he wanted to be and then examine whether his actions that day matched. This wasn't abstract philosophy, it was practical identity work. By constantly clarifying who he was supposed to be and comparing his actions to that ideal, he kept himself on track. You can do the same. The practical application: start telling yourself a new story about who you are. Not who you want to become someday, but who you are right now. I am someone who does the work. I am someone who shows up every day. I am someone who finishes what they start. These statements, repeated and acted upon, gradually become true. The identity shapes the actions, and the actions reinforce the identity. Write down 3 identity statements that describe the person you want to be. Put them where you'll see them daily. But here's the crucial part. Every day, ask yourself whether your actions that day matched those statements. If they did, celebrate. You're building the identity. If they didn't, don't beat yourself up but recommit. Tomorrow is another opportunity to vote for the person you want to become. But here's the key. You can't just say it. You have to prove it to yourself through action. Every time you do the work, you're providing evidence that you are who you say you are. Every time you skip, you're providing counter-evidence. The statements only become identity when they're backed by behavior. There's a feedback loop here that's worth understanding. Identity shapes behavior, and behavior shapes identity. When you act in ways consistent with your desired identity, you strengthen that identity. When you act inconsistently, you weaken it. This means every action is a vote for or against the person you want to become. Each vote counts. The votes accumulate. Eventually, one identity wins the election. This is why consistency matters more than intensity. A single intense workout doesn't make you an athlete, but working out moderately every day for a year does. A single day of writing doesn't make you a writer, but writing something every day for a year does. Identity is built through accumulated action over time, not through occasional bursts. The practical implication: focus on not breaking the chain. Whatever action represents your desired identity, do it every day without exception. Miss once and get back immediately. The longer the chain of consistent action, the stronger the identity becomes. Eventually, the behavior becomes automatic, not because you've developed willpower, but because you've developed identity. "I am someone who writes every day" is much more powerful than "I am trying to write more." The fifth truth is that small actions compound into massive results. Most people want big changes, so they attempt big actions. They try to transform overnight. They commit to radical programs, and almost always they fail. The change is too big, too fast, too unsustainable. Within weeks, they're back where they started, often worse off, because now they've added failure to their story. The Stoics knew that character is built in the smallest moments, not in grand gestures, but in daily choices, not in peak experiences, but in mundane repetitions. The question isn't what you do once, but what you do consistently every day, when no one is watching and no one cares. Here's the math that most people miss. Small, daily improvements compound exponentially. If you improve by just 1% per day, you're not 365% better after a year. You're 37 times better because of compounding. But if you decline by 1% per day, you're reduced to nearly nothing. The small choices matter enormously, not individually, but cumulatively. This means you should focus on small, sustainable actions rather than dramatic, unsustainable ones. Don't try to write for 4 hours, write for 15 minutes. Don't try to run a marathon, walk for 10 minutes. Don't try to meditate for an hour. Sit in silence for 60 seconds. These small actions done consistently will produce greater results than any burst of intensity that burns out quickly. There's a psychological benefit too. Small actions are easy to start. They don't trigger the resistance that large actions do. Your brain doesn't panic at the thought of 15 minutes. It might panic at the thought of 4 hours. By keeping actions small, you bypass the resistance that kills most intentions before they begin. The Stoics understood this principle well. They focused on the present moment, on the next small choice, rather than on distant goals. Marcus Aurelius wrote his meditations one thought at a time, not as a grand project, but as a daily practice. Seneca wrote his letters day by day, not all at once. The accumulation of these small daily efforts produced works that have lasted 2,000 years. There's another benefit to small actions. They're correctable. When you commit to a small action and it doesn't work, you can adjust quickly. When you commit to a massive effort and it doesn't work, you've wasted enormous resources and time. Small actions allow for rapid experimentation and learning. You try something, see what happens, and adjust. This feedback loop accelerates growth. Comment below with one small action you're going to take today. Not a big goal, not a dramatic change. One tiny action that moves you forward. Writing it down makes it real. The sixth truth is that discipline must be built, not summoned. Most people think of discipline as something you either have or don't have. You're either a disciplined person or you're not. But discipline isn't a personality trait. It's a skill. And like any skill, it can be developed through practice. The Stoics built discipline systematically. They practiced voluntary discomfort to strengthen their tolerance. They established routines that removed the need for constant decision-making. They started with small disciplines and gradually expanded. They didn't expect to summon superhuman discipline from nowhere. They built it brick by brick, day by day. Here's how to build discipline. Start with something so small that failure is almost impossible. Make your bed every morning. That's it. Just make your bed. Do this for 30 days without missing once. Then add another small discipline. Maybe 5 minutes of reading. 30 more days. Then another. And another. What you're doing is training the muscle of discipline itself. Each successful completion teaches your brain that you follow through on commitments. Each small win builds confidence for larger challenges. After a year of adding monthly disciplines, you'll have 12 solid habits and a strong foundation of self-trust. The key is never missing twice. Missing once is an accident. Missing twice is the beginning of a new pattern. If you miss a day, the most important thing is to get back on track immediately. Don't let one miss become two. Don't let two become a week. The discipline is in the recovery, not the perfect streak. There's a deeper principle here about self-trust. Every time you keep a commitment to yourself, you build trust in yourself. Every time you break a commitment, you erode that trust. Most people have eroded their self-trust so much through years of broken promises to themselves that they no longer believe their own intentions. When they say, "I'm going to start exercising," they don't even believe it themselves. Building discipline rebuilds self-trust. When you keep the small commitment to make your bed every day for 30 days, you prove to yourself that your word means something. This proof changes how you relate to your own intentions. You start to believe yourself again, and that belief makes larger disciplines possible. The Stoics understood that the person you need to trust most is yourself. External circumstances change. Other people are unpredictable. But if you can trust yourself to do what you say you'll do, you have an unshakable foundation. Building discipline is building that foundation. Seneca practiced what he called poverty days, where he would eat simple food, wear rough clothes, and deprive himself of comforts. Not because he had to, but to prove to himself that he could. This voluntary discomfort built resilience. It showed him that his happiness didn't depend on external conditions. When real difficulties came, he was prepared because he had practiced. You can apply this same principle. Practice doing hard things when you don't have to. Take cold showers. Fast occasionally. Work in uncomfortable conditions. These practices build what might be called discomfort tolerance. When you voluntarily experience difficulty, involuntary difficulty loses its power to stop you. There's also value in what might be called discipline stacking. Once you've established one discipline, use it as an anchor for others. If you've mastered making your bed, add 5 minutes of stretching immediately after. The first discipline creates a trigger for the second. After 30 days, the stretching is automatic. Then add a third discipline. Over time, you build chains of positive behavior that run on autopilot. The Stoics also used accountability, not to others, but to themselves. They kept journals, reviewed their days, and honestly assessed their adherence to their intentions. This self-accountability creates an internal witness, a part of you that observes and evaluates your behavior. When you know you'll be reviewing your actions each night, you act differently during the day. The seventh truth is that action exposes what thinking conceals. You can think about a problem forever without solving it. You can plan a project indefinitely without ever learning if it's viable. You can analyze options endlessly without ever discovering which one works. Only action reveals truth. The Stoics valued practical wisdom over theoretical knowledge. They weren't interested in philosophy that couldn't be lived. They tested ideas through application. They made decisions, observed results, and adjusted. This action feedback loop taught them more than any amount of contemplation could. Most people are stuck in analysis paralysis. They're afraid to act because they might be wrong. They want certainty before commitment. But certainty comes from action, not before it. You can't know if your business idea works until you launch. You can't know if you'll enjoy a hobby until you try it. You can't know your limits until you push against them. Here's a practical rule. When you've been thinking about something for more than a week without new information, stop thinking and start doing. Take the smallest possible action that will give you real data. Launch a minimal version, make a call, send an email. Do something that generates feedback from reality rather than from your own speculation. This is how the Stoics learned, through life itself. Marcus Aurelius didn't become wise by reading about wisdom. He became wise by ruling, by making decisions with real consequences, by watching what worked and what didn't. The empire was his laboratory. Your life is yours. The action doesn't have to be big, it just has to be real. Real action in the real world generating real feedback. That's worth more than 100 hours of thinking about what might happen. There's a concept called minimum viable action. It's the smallest possible action that will give you real information about what to do next. If you're considering a career change, the minimum viable action might be one conversation with someone in that field. If you're thinking about starting a business, it might be one call to a potential customer. These small actions produce disproportionate insight because they're based on reality, not speculation. The eighth truth is that motion is not the same as action. Many people are constantly busy, but never productive. They're always moving, but never arriving. They confuse activity with achievement. They fill their days with tasks that feel like work, but produce no results. The Stoics distinguished between being busy and being effective. Seneca criticized those who were leisurely busy, always occupied, but never accomplishing what mattered. He saw that most activity is a form of avoidance, a way to feel productive while hiding from the important work that actually scares us. Consider your own life. How many hours do you spend on email, social media, meetings, and administrative tasks? These feel like work. They keep you occupied. But do they move you toward your most important goals? Often they're the opposite. They're comfortable substitutes for the uncomfortable actions that would actually change your life. Here's the distinction. Motion is activity that doesn't directly produce results. Action is activity that does. Reading about fitness is motion. Doing a workout is action. Planning a business is motion. Talking to a potential customer is action. Thinking about writing is motion. Writing is action. Motion isn't entirely useless. Sometimes you need to learn before you can do. But motion becomes a trap when it's used to avoid action. When you've read enough books and attended enough courses and bought enough tools, but still haven't started, you're using motion as a hiding place. The practical application: look at your to-do list and separate motion from action. Which items, if completed, would directly produce results? Those are actions. Prioritize them ruthlessly. Do them first when your energy is highest. Let the motion tasks fill the gaps or eliminate them entirely if they're not essential. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "At dawn, when you have trouble getting out of bed, tell yourself, I have to go to work as a human being. What do I have to complain of if I'm going to do what I was born for?" He didn't ask what activities he would perform. He asked what work needed to be done. That framing cuts through the busy work and reveals what actually matters. There's a useful exercise here. At the end of each week, review everything you did and ask of each activity, did this directly produce a meaningful result? You might be surprised how much of your week was filled with motion that felt productive, but wasn't. This awareness is the first step toward redirecting that energy toward genuine action. The ninth truth is that fear is a compass pointing toward necessary action. The things you're most afraid to do are usually the things you most need to do. Fear of failure, fear of judgment, fear of discomfort. These fears guard the gates to your growth. What you resist persists. What you confront transforms. The Stoics practiced running toward what scared them, not recklessly, but deliberately. They knew that avoidance strengthens fear, while confrontation weakens it. Every time you avoid something scary, you teach yourself that the fear was justified. Every time you confront it, you teach yourself that you can handle more than you thought. There's a neurological basis for this. When you avoid something you fear, your brain registers the avoidance as the reason you survived. It thinks, I avoided that thing and I'm still here, so avoiding must be the right strategy. The fear actually grows stronger because your brain has no evidence that you could handle the feared situation. The only way to weaken fear is to face it and show your brain that you survived. Ask yourself, what action am I avoiding right now? What have I been putting off because it makes me uncomfortable? That thing, whatever it is probably exactly what you need to do. Not because discomfort is good for its own sake, but because the most important actions in life are usually on the other side of fear. The practical application: each day, identify one action you're avoiding because of fear and do it first. Make the uncomfortable call. Have the difficult conversation. Submit the application. Ask the question. The size of the action doesn't matter. What matters is that you're practicing moving toward fear rather than away from it. This builds what might be called a fear tolerance. Like any tolerance, it increases with exposure. The more you practice confronting small fears, the more capable you become of confronting large ones. Eventually, fear becomes a signal of importance rather than a reason to retreat. When you feel fear, instead of running away, you start to think, there must be something valuable here, otherwise I wouldn't be afraid. Epictetus was born a slave. He had every reason to be afraid, to avoid, to hide. But he built a philosophy of confrontation. He taught that the only things worth fearing are the things within our control that we might do wrong. Our own cowardice, our own dishonesty, our own failure to act. External threats deserve preparation, not fear. And avoidance is never preparation. There's a practice worth adopting, the fear list. Each week, write down 3 things you're avoiding because they scare you. Not physical dangers, but emotional ones. Difficult conversations, creative risks, public exposure. Then commit to doing one of them, not all 3, just one. Make a regular practice of moving toward what scares you. Over time, you'll notice something remarkable. The fear becomes less intense. Not because the situations become less challenging, but because you've proven to yourself that you can handle them. Your comfort zone expands. What once seemed terrifying becomes merely uncomfortable, then routine. This expansion happens only through action, never through avoidance. The Stoics also recognized that most fears are about imagined futures that never materialize. We fear what might happen, not what is happening. When you actually do the thing you fear, you often find it wasn't as bad as you imagined. The anticipation was worse than the reality. But you can't learn this through thinking. You can only learn it through doing. The 10th truth is that today is the only day that exists. Tomorrow is a concept. Yesterday is a memory. The only reality is now, and now is when action happens. Every time you postpone something until tomorrow, you're postponing it into an abstraction. Tomorrow never actually comes. There's only an endless series of todays. The Stoics had an acute sense of time's passage and life's brevity. They practiced memento mori, remembrance of death, not to be morbid, but to be urgent. Knowing that life is finite transforms how you spend it. The tasks you'd postpone indefinitely suddenly become urgent when you remember that your time is limited and uncertain. Seneca wrote, "You are arranging what lies in fortune's control and abandoning what lies in yours." Every moment spent planning a future you don't control is a moment stolen from the present you do control. The only action that's real is action taken now. The only day that counts is today. This doesn't mean never planning. Plans are useful, but plans become harmful when they substitute for present action. The plan to exercise starting Monday is worthless compared to the walk you could take right now. The plan to write that book this year is worthless compared to the paragraph you could write in the next 10 minutes. Here's the practical application. Whatever you're thinking about doing someday, do some version of it today. Not the whole thing, just something. A phone call, a paragraph, a single push-up. The point isn't to complete the project today. The point is to act today, because today is all you actually have. The Stoics would begin each day by reminding themselves it might be their last. Not to create anxiety, but to create urgency. If this were your last day, would you spend it talking about what you're going to do, or would you do it? There's a useful thought experiment here. Imagine you have only 1 year to live. What would you do differently? What would you stop postponing? What conversations would you have? What risks would you take? Now ask yourself, why aren't you doing those things anyway? What makes you think you have unlimited time? Marcus Aurelius wrote, "Think of yourself as dead. You have lived your life. Now take what's left and live it properly." This isn't pessimism, it's clarity. The recognition of mortality cuts through the fog of postponement and reveals what actually matters. And what matters is action, taken today, not someday. Let me bring all of this together. The gap between who you are and who you could be is measured in action, not intention, not planning, not talking. Action. Every day you spend describing the life you want is a day you're not building it. Every conversation about your goals is energy not spent achieving them. Every announcement of what you're going to do makes it less likely you'll actually do it. Here are the 10 truths we've explored. First, talking destroys doing. The social reward of announcing intentions substitutes for the reward of achievement. Second, action creates motivation. Don't wait to feel ready. Start, and the motivation will follow. Third, environment shapes action more than willpower. Design your surroundings to support your intentions. Fourth, identity drives action more than goals. Focus on who you're becoming, not just what you want to achieve. Fifth, small actions compound into massive results. Consistency beats intensity every time. Sixth, discipline must be built, not summoned. Start small and add gradually. Seventh, action exposes what thinking conceals. Only real-world feedback reveals truth. Eighth, motion is not action. Distinguish between activity that produces results and activity that doesn't. Ninth, fear is a compass. What you're avoiding is often what you most need to do. 10th, today is the only day that exists. Action taken now is the only action that's real. These principles are simple, but not easy. They require you to break habits of avoidance that may have accumulated over a lifetime. They require you to stop seeking comfort in talk and start seeking growth through action. They require you to become a different kind of person, someone who does rather than discusses, who acts rather than plans, who builds rather than describes. The Stoics didn't leave behind elaborate theories. They left behind examples of lives lived with fierce intention. Marcus Aurelius ran an empire while writing philosophy in the margins of his days. Epictetus rose from slavery to become a teacher who shaped minds for millennia. Seneca navigated the deadliest politics in history while producing works that still guide us today. They didn't talk about what they would do. They did it. You have the same number of hours they had. You have resources and opportunities they couldn't have imagined. The only thing standing between you and the life you want is the action you're not taking. And the action you're not taking is hiding behind the words you are speaking. Stop talking. Start doing. Not tomorrow. Not when conditions are right. Not when you feel ready. Now. Here's your challenge. For the next 7 days, keep a complete silence about your goals and intentions. Tell no one what you're working on. Share no plans. Make no announcements. Use all the energy that would have gone into talking and channel it into doing. At the end of the week, look at what you've accomplished. Compare it to what you typically accomplish when you're free to talk. The difference will teach you more than any video or book could. There's one more practice worth mentioning. At the end of each day, ask yourself 2 questions. First, what did I actually do today that moved me forward? Not what did I plan, not what did I intend, but what did I actually do? Second, what did I talk about doing that I could have actually done instead? These questions will reveal the gap between your words and your actions. And awareness of that gap is the first step to closing it. The Stoics believed that character is destiny, but character isn't something you think about or talk about. It's something you build through action, through doing, through the accumulation of countless small choices made when no one is watching and no one cares. Your character is being built right now, in this moment, by what you choose to do next. What will you choose? Will you talk about this video, share it with others, discuss the ideas, or will you act on it, starting now, in the next 5 minutes, with no announcement and no fanfare? The choice is yours. It's always been yours, and it's the only thing that's ever been yours. Thank you for staying with me through this. If this has given you something valuable, leave a like. Subscribe if you want more content on transforming intention into action, and comment below with the word action to show me you're ready to stop talking and start doing. The world is full of talkers. Be a doer. See you in the next video.